Hello my quilting friends! In this tutorial I want to teach you how to make this hourglass unit. It's super simple and really fun to piece. So to begin, take 2 squares of fabric, stack them on top of each other, take a ruler and mark a line from corner to corner. Now take this to your machine and you're going to stitch exactly a 1/4 inch to both sides of that line. And if this seems familiar, this is the exact same steps to creating half square triangles. That's what you're going to get. I'm going to cut right down that line and I'm going to end up with 2 half square triangles, just like so. Now you want to take your time, go on ahead and finger press that seam allowance open and then give it a press with a hot, dry iron. I like to press those seam allowances open just so they're nice and flat. Now I think that's perfectly fine because I lower my stitch length when I sew to 1.5 millimeters, so it's a nice tight stitch. So here we go. This is what our half square triangles look like at this stage. Really cute. Now to make our hourglass square, what we're going to do is stack these on top of each other. Now if you're going for a really super scrappy effect, you'll want to grab 2 different half square triangles like this. If you want an effect where you get kind of a checkerboard, you get 2 of each color, then use 2 of the same half square triangle. Just make sure that when you stack them up and the colors are across one another. Okay, so now I'm going to stack this up, and I found there's a little bit of a trick to getting these lined up just exactly right. And it starts with folding these in half. So I'm going to fold this in half, just like so, and make sure that that seam line is lined up just exactly right. And I'm just folding this corner to corner. So there we go. That's going to press a nice crease line across that half square triangle. Now I'm going to top it, and this time I'm going to fold this one with the wrong sides together. You can see this will kind of fold the 2 of them so they kind of are nesting into one another a little bit. I think that makes it just a little bit easier because in order to get that center seam to line up, you just need to make sure that the seam lines through the middle of these half square triangles are nicely lined up. Okay, there we go. And notice that I did not trim these half square triangles down. I cut them apart and then I take them and put them directly together to make the hourglass squares. I don't do any trimming or anything like that between those steps. Okay, so now you can see I'm kind of nesting these together. I'm making sure that center seam where that line down the middle is lined up really nicely. Now I'm going to flip it over and I'll place a pin to hold these pieces together. I kind of want to run that perpendicular to the seam. That looks great. Okay, so I have a crease line, but that can be a little bit hard to see. So I'm going to grab my ruler and again, mark a line corner to corner right across those squares. And you want to make sure that this line is being marked perpendicular to the seam line you just stitched. Okay, so now this is all prepped up and ready to go. We're going to take this unit to the machine and do the exact same thing again. We're going to stitch a 1/4 inch to both sides of that center marked line. So I'm here on my machine. I'll just slip those pieces right under the presser foot. And I'm just lining up the edge of that presser foot with that marked line. And be careful and slow down as I near those seam allowances and slip out my pen. And then stitch right over and onto the other side. And you can see I used just a regular pencil to mark that lighter fabric so I could see it. There we go. Now to keep my machine in stitching mode so I don't have to break thread or waste my bobbin thread, I just grab a scrap charger. That's just a folded in half piece of fabric. Then I clip off. You can see that doesn't waste any bobbin thread. I could just keep on stitching, rotate my piece around, and then stitch a 1/4 inch from the opposite side. So really simple piecing. If you want to think about these hourglass squares. There's so many different square names here. Hourglass squares, these are basically just half square triangles done twice. You basically stitch the exact same way 2 times, and that's how you make this unit. So now I'm going to cut right down the middle to separate my hourglass squares. And that looks great. Got a nice matchup right in the middle. Same thing for that one. So from here, you want to take that and finger press that seam allowance open. It's really important to get in the habit of finger pressing because it's really hard to open that seam and get it nice and flat if you try and dig at it with the tip of your iron. So there we go, just a quick finger press, and I just run my fingernail along that. You could also use like a ruler and just open that up with maybe the flat end of the ruler like that. That can work too. Just be really gentle. That is on the diagonal, which is the bias. That's the stretchy side of the fabric. So just be really gentle. So there we go. We've got two really funky hourglass squares. And I love it whenever you use the same two half square triangles, but you can also mix it up and use half square triangles with totally different fabrics and you'll end up with something like that. But we've got one more step here, and that is to trim this down so it is the correct size and shape for your pattern, because the size that you're going to end up with is just a little bit weird. So I'm going to place my ruler on here, and trimming this up does take a little bit of patience. I do like my spinny mat here. It does make things a little bit easier. So here we go. I'm going to first line up the 45-degree line on that center seam line. I'm also going to line up the cut size, the point that I am aiming for the entire shape to be squared down to, and that is 4 inches. So I'm lining up the 4-inch mark in both corners and that 45-degree line right through the middle. I'm going to press firmly, and I'm left-handed, so I'm going to cut with my left hand. Now I'm going to take the whole thing and rotate. There we go. Now I'm going to cut again. And then now I'll shift the ruler around. Now, more than anything else, the most important thing is please don't cut across the top. If you don't have a spinny mat like this, please don't cut across the top. Just reposition your ruler. I cut myself. What can happen is your blade can skip up a lot easier than you think, and you can cut the tip of your finger off. And trust me, that does not save you any time on your project. So go on ahead and take your time and rotate it around. All right, now at this point, I'm going to be lining up the cut size of my hourglass square plus the 45-degree line, plus I'm making sure that that diagonal line is also hitting those corners as well. There's a lot of stuff to line up, and if things aren't lining up quite perfectly, it might be because some stuff might have gone wonky if you pulled those seams, because we basically have 2 bias seams down the middle. So if you find this isn't squaring up nicely, what you might want to do is start again. Make sure to double starch your fabric to get it nice and stiff, and that can definitely help. But that is how you're going to piece and trim down your hourglass squares. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed learning how to piece an hourglass square with me, and you're ready to get on your machine and give it a try. I'm going to be using this unit in this quilt block. This is the Patchwork Mosaic, and it is the second quilt block for the Friendship Quilt Along. Each month in 2019, we're going to piece a big supersized quilt block like this and then quilt it 2 ways on 2 very different machines. So if you'd like to join in the fun and make this scrappy happy quilt block with me, come and learn more at leahday.com/friendship. Until next time, let's go quilt.